Are you scratching your head wondering what the difference is between the DOM and JavaScript? And yes, in theory, we just saw what the differences were. JavaScript's a programming language that lives within its own environment, call it V8 in the browser. And we have the DOM, and the DOM lives within the browser, and we've got this API that connects the two. But if you're anything like me, nothing is more clear than a practical example. Let's just code a simple page here. I want to use the setTimeout function. And once we code the very simple page here, I want to go through it. And I want you to understand the differences between the DOM and JavaScript. So have fun. That's the most important thing here. So sit back, grab a coffee like I have, and let's code. Let's code together and let's see the difference between the DOM and JavaScript. Let's start by setting up an HTML document. I've just got a simple, you can see here an index.html file. Within the HTML, we've got to have a head. Within the head, let's have a title and let's call it DOM versus JavaScript. So far, so good. Now let's create a body. And what are we going to do? Well, okay. What I want us to do is I want us to have a word. I chose a random word called Shavu. I want us to have a button that tells the user what Shavu means by opening up an external link to a dictionary. Okay, and that dictionary is going to be displayed on a new window. So we're going to be using the window object, which is really cool. And we're going to have to be using a click listener event. And we're going to have to be using the setTimeout function because I want that dictionary window to close after 5 seconds. So it's a very, very cool and exciting lecture. So our heading 1 tag will be asking the question. Wanna find out what Shavu means? And then we can have a paragraph tag explaining what we want the user to do. To find out, click the button below. The new window will close after 5,000 milliseconds, aka 5 seconds. And of course, we need our button. And we can call the button Curious. And let's now display this page on our browser, just so you can see what we've done so far. So here I'm opening up our live server. We've been through this. And there we go. Want to find out what Shavu means. And if we click on the button, of course, nothing happens yet because we haven't yet defined the click event. Let's go back to our Visual Studio Code and let's start adding this functionality now. The first thing I want to say is that there are many different ways to add event listeners onto our page. Here, I'm just going to be using one of them. And we're going to access the onClick property, okay, or attribute provided to us by the DOM API. And there we're going to define our own function called, we can call it anything. Let's just call it new window. And we know it's a function. So there we go. If we save this and we go back to our browser and let's open the console. And we'll actually go to the console. If I click this button, you can see here that new window is not defined. Well, of course it's not defined because we've said that we want our browser to actually execute this new window function, but we haven't defined the new window function. So going back to our code editor, that's exactly what we have to do. And this new window function is JavaScript. So it has to be inserted within script tags. And let's define our function, new window. And here we go. We've got a JavaScript function all ready to go and set up. And here we can just console log to the screen, hi. So if we go back to our browser, we click this button, there we go, we see hi. So we know that our onClick event listener is working, and we know that our function's working, it's executing. But we don't just want to console log hi, right? Remember the purpose of this whole lecture is to demonstrate the difference between the DOM and JavaScript, and I want to use the setTimeout function in order to do so. So we want to open a new window. We want that window to close after 5 seconds. So let's do that. Well, firstly, where do we want to go? Well, we want to find out what Shavu means. So in order for that to happen, I want to use the JavaScript let keyword, which defines a new variable. And I want to define our URL, where we want to go. And I'm just using some random dictionary. You can use any page you want. The one I'm using is found at dictionary.com/browse/Shavu. There you go. So that's my URL defined. And I don't just want the user to be redirected to the screen, remember? I want a new window to pop up. And in one of the previous lectures, remember what's king in our browser? What's king? The window object. And within the window object, we've got a plethora of properties and methods. One of them is called open. So all we need to do now, again, using the JavaScript keyword let to define a variable, and we can call it what we want. Let's call it new window. We want to access our window object. And within the window object, we're going to access this method called open. This open method takes 3 arguments. Okay, so let's actually go through them. The first argument is the most obvious. It is the URL. And we've defined that in a JavaScript variable called URL. The second argument is optional. And it basically tells us how we want to see this page. And the default is that a new window will open. And we want the new window to open in our case. But you can pass other parameters like self, for example, which will replace your current page. But here we're going to put blank, which is there by default and just means you want a new window. The third parameter is the specs of the new window. So for example, here, let's just define our own width and height. Okay, just as an example. Let's make the width 500 and let's make the height, I don't know, 800 pixels. Okay, so there you go. So now we've actually created a new window. How awesome is this? So there we go. We've defined our URL and we've defined a new window. What happens now if we save this and we go to our browser? Let's just get rid of this console and let's click this curious button. What's going to happen? Well, how cool is that? It literally comes up with the meaning of shavu. Shavu is a boisterous party or celebration. So there you have it. There's your little party topic for your next event. But anyway, you'll notice now that the window stays up, which is very annoying for a user. So the next thing we want to do, and the last thing we want to do, and the whole point of this lecture is to explain the difference between the DOM and JavaScript. And I want to use the setTimeout function to do so. So let's go back to our text editor and let's now close this new window after 5 seconds. And we're going to use the setTimeout function, as I mentioned. And this, my dear students, is provided to us by the DOM API, setTimeout. And what's nice is that my text editor can actually set out the basic structure for us. So if I just click tab on my keyboard, there you go. It sets out in new arrow syntax format the structure of the setTimeout function. And it's a very simple function. Let me just zoom in here so you can maybe see it a bit better. The function just takes an optional parameter or argument that we pass into the function. Here it's just blank. We don't need to pass anything into it. And then we've got this curly brackets. And in between those curly brackets, we've got what we want to happen. And then the very last argument to the setTimeout function is the timeout. It's how often do we want this function to happen, or when do we want it to happen? So here we said that we wanted to take 5,000 milliseconds. And what do we want to happen in 5,000 milliseconds? Well, we want to grab our new window, don't we? And what's really cool is that this new window that we've created is itself an object, and it's got many properties and methods available to it. One of those is close. That's all we want to happen. We want to close this new window after 5 seconds. And boom shakalaka, we should be done. So if we go back to our browser and I click on this button, are you curious to see what will happen? Let's have a look. The new window opens up. We've got shavu.
Whoopee!
And it closes. I was a bit worried for a second that it wasn't going to close, but it closed. Closed after 5 seconds. So there you have it. This is our code. We've just done the setTimeout function, which is provided to us not by JavaScript, by the DOM API. But in the next lecture, I want us to dissect this code to understand exactly what the differences are between JavaScript and the DOM. Stay motivated. I'm going to see you in the next lecture and it's going to blow your mind.